Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious. Yes, I'm late, but I'm here. What's happening, everybody? What's going on out there? What did I do this week? Oh yeah, I was in Italy and then I came back. So it was awesome. Todd Roy says, how was Italy? It was really good. A great time hanging with the nice folks from IK Multimedia and made some new friends, saw some old friends, and then ended up just going to Venice for a couple days because I'd never been. I thought I should probably do that if I'm going to go all the way over there. I got to go to the Ferrari. I think I told you guys this last week. Ferrari Museum, because I was in Venice when I was doing this last week, right? So, but anyways, that was great. And yeah, overall, really great experience on an eventful trip back. American Airlines took 2 days to get my guitar back to me, but they did. So it's all good. No big deal. If you're ever flying through Heathrow, or I recommend definitely any like Charles de Gaulle or what's Amsterdam, Schiphol or whatever the hell that airport's called there. If you're ever going through any of those and you're flying, like, say, from one European destination to there to catch a connection back to the US, I recommend you have 3 hours for layover. I didn't on the way back. It was an oversight somehow. I got booked with a ticket that had just an hour and a half layover. And I was like, ooh, 90 minutes. I bet it's a terminal change, like flying to Heathrow from Italy. And sure enough, it was a terminal change because I was on a partner airline it was British Airways from Italy to Heathrow, and then it was American Airlines. So I had to go to where their terminal is. Terminal 3 was a long bus ride. You know, you got to go through security again. You got to do all this stuff. So anyways, I was like looking at it in the airport. I was like, I don't think that's going to be a long enough connection. Sure enough, it wasn't. But to their credit, British Airways booked me via American on the next outgoing flight. So it only cost me a couple hours, but they did lose my bag. Not lose. They just never loaded it on the new plane that, you know, and they actually automatically rebooked me. So like I was literally on the bus going from terminal 5 to terminal 3, calling American and going like, hey, I think there's no way I'm going to make this next flight. Like what's next, you know? And they were like, it says here that you're on the 4:50 flight or whatever. And I was like, did they rebook me? And the person dug a little deeper and said, yeah, they've already rebooked you. So pretty organized over there at British Airways, I must say. Anyways, that's just my recommendation. When you're ever flying internationally, give it 3 hours. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a get to the airport early guy. Like these days, I don't like stress. I don't need to be at home for another half an hour or push it till the last minute because, oh, it's only, you know, like I'm always the guy that wants to get to the airport 3 hours ahead of every flight. You know, I've like got a good Amex and stuff, and I can get into lounges and stuff and all over the place. I'd rather go there and get some work done and eat some food and chill out and not have the stress of like, am I going to make the flight? You know. So I always book fairly long connections, and I always get to the airport early. That's just, you know, age and wisdom. That's all that is right there. Just dropping some wisdom. I just don't want you to be stressed. Stress is a killer. Todd says, back home must feel good even after being to the motherland. Wish I could go to Tokyo in October to attend your clinics. And so between you and me, my friend, a Czech model, is in Tokyo. There's a lot of models in Tokyo. That is the thing. You distracted me. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, clinics. Right. So here's the deal. I'm doing a clinic in October, first week of October. I put up the info on my Instagram. If Firehouse Guitars in Grand Rapids, if Michigan, if you're around those parts, be sure and come on down and hang out. And then I'm doing one at Sweetwater. I'm sitting here staring at the flyer for it. It's October 9th. So I believe it's the other one's the 8th, I do believe. And then Sweetwater's October 9th. 7 to 9 p.m. free clinic hosted by Sweetwater. And these are my Inspired by the Tone clinics. So what I've done is come up with a bunch of interesting guitar tones, and I wove them into a few pieces of music. And then also I picked a couple cover songs with some of my favorite tones and kind of unique guitar sounds. And I'm going to play all that stuff. And then I'm going to kind of detail, what I think makes the sound special. I've come up with like, I'm doing some neat stuff. Basically it's going to be PT15s, a couple of them in stereo. And I'm using the Quad Cortex as well for all my effects. And I'm using it 4 cable. And, but I'm doing things like drives and stuff in the Quad Cortex and all kinds of delays, all kinds of modulation. And I'm going to go over basically like, I'm going to detail like, short delays, long delays, when to use analog, when to use tape, when I use digital, what circular delay is, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot on delays because I find delays really interesting. And, the concept of the clinic inspired by the tone basically being like, I do get inspired by guitar sounds. That's like part of my job. And I think we all get inspired by guitar sounds, and it makes you play a certain way. So when an analog delay is appropriate or when a tape delay is appropriate to make you play a certain way, and some historical examples in the clinic of great uses, I think, of analog delay, great uses of tape delay. That's all going to be included, as well as my little original musical bits. And then lots of, time for Q&A and stuff, which will basically probably turn into what we do here, talking about gear. So when do you use that tape delay? Or how do you plug it in the chain? How do you, that kind of stuff. So, but I'm really having fun developing it. I'm going to take my my new Sir. Where the heck is it? What did I do with it? It's over there. Let's just grab it so that I can just hold on to it during the proceedings here today. I'm going to bring this one for all the clinics. So those are the ones in the States, Sweetwater and Firehouse Guitars in Grand Rapids. But then I'm doing a few in Tokyo too. So if you're in Japan, 2 in Tokyo, actually. One is an event that's maybe just for students at MI. I'm not sure, but I'm doing the main clinic I'm doing in Tokyo is at the ESP store in Ochanomizu. So that should be fun. It's like a multi-floor, in Guitar Haven of Tokyo, Ochanomizu, one of those multi-floor stores there. So I'm doing a clinic there. And then I'm also doing a clinic in Kyoto at the biggest music store for the biggest store in Kyoto, I guess. But they've rented out a separate facility for the clinic. So super stoked on that. That's going to be in October, 3rd week of October. Yeah. Busy. Come November, I think I'm going to stay home for a couple months. I think it's time to stop flying all around the place. I've done a lot of travels here. I've been to Europe 3 times this year and did a whole US run, and now Japan coming up. So I think I'm going to spend a couple months at home. And on top of all that, like I told you last week, we rescued a kitty, and he's doing great. He's at my place now. You want to see a picture of him? Sure you do. That's what you're really here for. You don't want to talk about guitar stuff. You want to know about this cat. God, he's cute. Where is he? There he is. Just look at him. There he is up on the top of my dresser this morning. Oh, what a good boy. 2 weeks ago, he was in a box, all dehydrated and covered in fleas, and now he's just stoked, eating good food. Look at him. With his stupid little butt. Oh God! I'm getting derailed now because I just want to go home and see him again. But anyway, there he is. He's a great little guy. I don't know if we're like fostering or keeping. I'm not 100% sure yet exactly what's happening, but of course I'm completely falling for him, and so we'll see. But he's a good little dude. I don't think he's, at this point, one thing's for sure, he's not going to any kind of shelter or anything like that. You know what I mean? It'd either be like we keep him, that's one option, or if we've got a good friend or something like that, that's like, I really want a cat, I would still consider that too, just the best place for him, whatever the best situation is. So anyway, have you ever played through a Dumble amp? So I did play through Dumble amp. They've got a couple at IK actually. And so that was just last week, and the one thing to note is that they're very different. They're all different. And the 2 there are very different. I played through one in Tokyo a while ago. That was like a number of years ago now, but it was also really great. They're kind of, like great Fenders or something, but they've got this drive circuit built in that has a, big round voice to it. That's cool. And the other thing I noticed about this one particular one the other day that I was playing in Italy was that they kind of have something in common with train wrecks, which is they have a lot of open top end. And on a train wreck amp, it's almost like a lot of stuff that maybe gets filtered out of other amps or things, or to chill it out or make it a little more mellow. They just leave them wide open, like on train wrecks. And maybe that's something that Howard would do too. I don't know, but it's like there's all these harmonics, and one note will just take off really easily into feedback with not that much gain happening. It needs some volume, and there's this similarity. So yeah, that was the one thing I noticed about. As soon as it happened, I was like, oh, it's kind of like that train wreck Liverpool I had here. Just a real, like, lots of harmonics and stuff in it, and a real kind of a fast attack and big notes, and then like all these harmonics and things that kind of make the amp real lively. So I don't really think it's rocket science. I mean, that I know the Liverpool is supposedly, I think, kind of a Fender front end, but it's got EL84s in it. So I don't know, I'd like to play more of them, and it's not my thing totally. I'm a Marshall Plexi guy. That's my core sound, where everything kind of comes from for me. I love Fender cleans though. Don't get me wrong. I mean, for clean sounds, yes. Super reverb is, what more could you ask for? But if I could have one guitar sound, it would be the 68 Plexi kind of thing. So that's my home base. And so when we're talking about drive, the Dumble drive thing isn't totally my thing, but I totally get it. And it is really fun to play. And it's a nice alternative sound to use sometimes. That's what I think. So I've got a super chat I got to get to there. I'll do that in a sec. I'm just looking through. There was a Dumble for the Masses amp that was released somewhat recently. What is it? What is it, Ian? Tell us. There's a lot of Dumbles out there that are like Tim's Dumble video. Did Tim do a Dumble video? I would like to see that. I haven't seen that. Tim Pierce. I should check that out. The Hedgehog, which is right here, is kind of a Dumble-y thing. John's take on that. I could plug it in, play through. I haven't played through it for a while, I must confess, and I need to play through it a little bit more, and see what I think. Yeah. Ooh, what else are we doing here? Let's see. Buddy of mine is in Germany, says Joe. Just went through the Mercedes Museum and sent a bunch of cool photos. That's cool. Yeah, I think I'm going to show you some of the Ferrari ones from last week, but let me see if I can really quick find. The Ferrari Museum was fascinating. Probably my favorite thing that I saw there was one of the first ones ever made, I think, which was like the 1948, and it kind of looks like a Porsche Speedster or something, a similar vibe to that, and it was really cool, and it was such a beautiful blue. It was a great color. I'd never seen anything like it. I don't really know that much about the history of Ferrari or anything like that, but I did find it very interesting. And the museum's beautifully done, and obviously there's a lot of pride. I did see this little Fiat, which was really cool. Look at that thing. It's like obviously like a little electric Fiat. I think it's like the smallest car. Kind of cool. But where's the Ferraris? Let me see. There's a few of us from the gathering by a beautiful Ferrari. Let me find this one. Was crazy. That was really cool. That's for when like your friends want you to drive them to the airport and you're like, nope, sorry, car for one. One thing that I found so interesting there, look at this thing. Jeez, what the heck is even going on there? One thing I found so interesting was there was this whole wall of upholstery, and like you can pick your steering wheels, you can pick your upholstery, pick all your colors and everything like that. And it was fascinating. And I took some pictures for like, reference for guitars, because here's a silver 80s Testarossa. That was pretty cool. Full Miami Vice. Let me show you some of the, so like they would have these kind of like situations where it was like, you see the paint color and then upholstery colors, like for the colors for the dash, colors for the wheel, colors, and I just thought it was so classy and cool, like how the come on, stop that. I don't want to adjust. I just want to see the friggin' photo. Like, look at this thing, green with the brown leather. You know what I mean? Like, and it was like, because the Ferraris are made to order. Can you imagine having the kind of money where you could just, I loved some of these colors. That's kind of, it looks like Cadillac green, like my sir. Look at some of these colors, like on a guitar. Come on, they're just so beautiful. So I was taking all these, kind of like, it looks like ice metallic or whatever. The blues, gorgeous, right? There's a little video I took of it. And I was like, oh my God, some of these colors are so cool. So I just thought and I guess, you go to Ferrari and you can pick all that stuff and the upholstery and stuff. Kind of neat. Anyway, geeking out. Cars are cool. Where was that super chat? I'm gonna find that. Just got my Nano Cortex. Says 3J Music won't be able to play it until tomorrow. Any thoughts on the preloaded captures, or did you not even bother? I didn't really bother. I didn't have a lot of time with it. As I said in the video, I was like, I just cracked this thing open, and it was because I had to go away, and so I was really under the gun for time. So I just kind of got to work. But you could load anything in there that I think you can go on the webs, quickly up, whatever. Why can't I talk? What am I trying to say? Bluetooth it up to your phone and then get on Cortex Cloud, and you're able to try anything. I mean, there's probably like a gajillion, you want an AC30, you want a, Marshalls or high gain stuff, you can go find them all. So just pull them in there and then audition. Mine are up on Cortex Cloud, by the way. So if you want to try the sounds from the video, you can. I've got my top hat capture up there. I've got my 72 Marshall 50 capture up there. And they're easy to find on Cortex Cloud. Just search for my name and Marshall and top hat, and you'll find them. Yep. Joe says, always good idea to get to the airport early and spend your time reading or looking at your phone or take a walk rather than rushing around and stressing yourself out before a long flight. Agreed. Yeah. Tell the truth. You show up for flights early so you can live stream set airport. Well, sometimes. I mean, if I've got a Sunday live or something and it's like, yeah, I'll get to the airport early and then I can do the whole stream. Not have to freak out. Yeah. Let's okay. What else we got here? Speaking of age and wisdom, any tips for traveling with a guitar in planes? My tip these days is just check it. I don't mess around with gig bags anymore. Really, I quit doing that probably 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I gave up on trying to get guitars in. I don't like the stress and the anxiety, and I don't like carrying it on anyway. I bought good, SKBI series or the equivalent Gator, and that's what I fly with these days. And just throw it on. And it's this guitar or whatever. I mean, I'm not concerned if it's a Les Paul or something. You really want to make sure you got a good flight case, but any of these, I've never had a problem, and I've never had a lost guitar longer than the other day. The other day was an anomaly. And, with modern bag tagging and stuff, you can see where the stuff is. It's like they knew right away. Oh, it never got on the plane in London. Okay. So here it is. And, or get an air tag and throw it in the case or whatever, if you really feel like you need to, but I don't even do that. I just, it's very modernized now, how all the scanning and they know where your bag is moving through the airport at any time, it seems like, or where it is. So I don't worry about it. I just check them now. That's it. If you're on the way to a gig, like a one-off and you're checking it, and if you've got a connection, it could be a concern. I could see how you could be like, well, maybe I should gig bag it because what if my guitar doesn't make it? And especially if it's a tight connection. If you're flying within the US and you've got a 50-minute connection or something like that, right? And you're on your way to a gig, it's like, there's a chance that guitar might not make it. That if you've got a checked bag, that's a tight, just imagine the guitar's got to get off one plane and somebody's got to physically read that tag and it's got to get all the way across to the terminal to some other plane. So then you might want to be carrying, just have everything with you. Those are the situations. You just take them one at a time. But But barring that, and especially if you've got a backup that's going to be backlined there and stuff, you're not really concerned about it. Like, I'll be covered to do the gig no matter what. Just check it. In a good case. Problem solved. Yep. What is the Grand Rapids date? So the Grand Rapids date, I believe it's on my website, on my Instagram. I think it's the 8th because October 9th is Sweetwater, and I believe that's the day after. I am not 100. It might be the 7th, but anyways, just double check with Firehouse Guitars, and it's also on you could look at my Instagram right now if you want to, and it's on there on a flyer. It's 2 posts back or something on my IG, and it'll show you. I'm gonna miss a whole bunch of comments here because I got to get to these super chats, but keep asking. Ask your question again if you like. Joe. Hi. Sunday live and cleaning my guitars and watching football and drinking some wine. Dude, that sounds fantastic. Are you a cider or wine guy? Both. Recommendations. Cider, I like Golden State. I like good old English. I like Aspel. And what else? Ciders. Just dry apple is what I dig, basically. I don't mind a Magners. Pretty good. I don't know if Magners is considered dry. I guess it's kind of medium dry, but that's all good stuff. And a wine, I like wine too, for sure. I'm a white wine guy. Refreshing, delicious. I drink red sometimes if I'm having a steak or something, and I drink rosé when I'm in France. No, I drink it here too. It's delicious. And I like tequila, and I like all kinds of stuff. There's a great brewery close to here now that has gluten-free beer that like everything is gluten reduced, and that is great for me because I can get like everything from stouts to Japanese lagers to pilsners to everything. So it's delish. Fantastic. Always fun. Sound like I got a drinking problem. I hope I don't. I try not to drink that much these days. I have a new ginger kitty. Her name is Ginger originally. I think naming cats is so difficult. It's crazy cat dad. That's me. I am a crazy cat dad. I've become that guy. I don't know what it is. I love cats, man. I love dogs too. I love animals more than ever these days. I'm just crazy about them. Maybe like become introverted and I shy away from people and become more into animals. But I get excited when I see animals now, like more than I ever, when you're in a line for coffee or whatever, somebody's got a dog or whatever. I'm always like, oh, can I pet your dog? I'm like so into it. Something kind of funny happened yesterday. Actually, I'll just tell this really quick and then we'll get back to the gear. I was at home and there was occasionally there's a lot of noise upstairs. I live in it's like a condo basically. And there was a lot of noise upstairs, and it's like it's a pretty quiet building, but whoever my neighbor is, that moved in upstairs is it's a very quiet building. It's a very good building, like a solid construction and stuff. But I've been hearing more and more like footfalls and stuff upstairs, and it drives me a little nuts, and I get to be grumpy sometimes. So the other day it was just like boom, 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 boom upstairs like crazy, and I was like, damn it, and I got kind of like I gotta go upstairs and say something. So I went up and I knocked on the door, and this guy comes to the door, and I go, hey, I've just been noticing like kind of a lot of like, through the floor or whatever. And he's like, oh, it's just these kitties we got. We got a couple little kittens. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I did too. Like, and then we start rapping about cats. And all of a sudden this little kitten comes to the door and is like adorable, like crazy colors. And I was like, oh my. So like within 30 seconds, I'm like, don't even worry about it. Just make all the noise you need to. Just went back downstairs. So I made a new cat friend. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it won't be forever, right? They're kittens. So kind of funny. All right. Sorry. Enough about cats and travel, all this business. We're talking about everything but guitar. Let's talk about guitars. What's this? Long and McQuaid had a sale on Space Echoes. There's a sale at Long and McQuaid on Space Echoes. That's the Canadian Guitar Center, basically. Arthur says, I really want the Dumble cleans. Love my bassman, my bassman. There's some sort of thing that makes the Dumble so different. Yeah. they're their own thing for sure. I don't know. I mean, it's the kind of Fender architecture, I think, but he definitely does his own thing. So just like a train wreck is not exactly a Marshall or a Vox or a Fender either, but largely based off certain circuits, the different models. Speaking of Fender cleans, does anybody really need a twin reverb? They're cool, man. I mean, I kind of like supers. I like the 10s. And no, nobody needs them, but it is a neat amp. I mean, they're really just clean and big. So speaking of Fender, let's talk about this a little bit today. I don't want to miss these super chats. I'm going to get to them, I swear. But what about the new Jack White amp? That thing is cool, man. I think I watched the video for it. Great video that they made. I haven't watched the video on the guitar. He brought out a few pieces of gear, I guess, with Fender. But the amp video is terrific and really unique. He's a smart guy, man. I mean, I visited when I was in Detroit. Not the last time, but the second to last time, I visited the Third Man Records, which is where their vinyl plant is and stuff. And, you can go and look through it. You can take tours, I think, of it and see. And it is so cool. And some of the stuff they're doing there with colored vinyl and everything's very creative. And he's just a classy, creative, stylish guy. He's got a great, it's just, he's an idea guy. He's got a great, handle on like classic as well as forward thinking, I think, and he does neat things. So like this Fender amp, if you haven't seen it, it's basically got a sort of a sophisticated reverb and harmonic tremolo in it. And instead of like two full channels like you would see on a vintage Fender where you've got, two inputs and then the normal channel and then a couple inputs and the reverb channel or whatever, let's say, which is sort of a lot of waste. There's basically like 5 controls. I think there's a drive, treble, middle, bass, maybe a presence, and then a master, I think, for the amp controls. And then you've got a bunch of controls for the reverb. You've got a full tone, like a bass and treble just for the reverb. And then the kind of the dwell control, and then the harmonic tremolo controls and stuff. So I think there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 controls for the tremolo and the reverb. And then you can put the reverb in different modes. So here's the really cool thing, if you haven't seen it yet, is the amp is actually stereo. It's got 2 power amps built in and 2 speakers, a 15 and a 10. There's a 6V6 power amp for the 10, and it's 20 watts or something. And then I think there's like a 50 or 40 watt power amp, something like that, for the, I think it's 50, dual 6V6 for the 15. So you've got the 2 amps with the 2 speakers, and you can harmonic tremolo between the 2, and it gets full stereo, so full on swirly if you're miking both speakers. And then you can pick to have the reverb in both speakers or just the 10, and it does this kind of wash thing, across. It is cool, man. It's really neat. I was watching it the other day, and I was like, this is really neat. I love how vintage it was, and yet with some modern. It's firmly vintage, but it's got some neat and unusual and like just some features like I've never seen before. So in an amp, and for the right kind of player, and it certainly sounds like his tone when he's playing through it. Like his, or at least his vibe or aesthetic or something comes through loud and clear. It's just really cool. Anyways, Arthur says the cat pride is growing, and the new kidder catter may need a few extra treats. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Arthur. Thanks so much. Thanks. You're too kind. Did you ever send me, Arthur, I know you took photos at the last show, and I get a lot of junk email these days, but I don't know if you sent me a link or anything for any more photos from the last show. Because I don't think I ever saw any more from the last gig. If you did send it, maybe you didn't, but if you did, can you send the link again? I'd love to see them, because Arthur's a great photographer. He took some really cool. As a matter of fact, it's your picture that I took to use on this little Sweetwater flyer that I'll be sharing soon. So, anyways, terrific photos from you, my friend. Appreciate it. Here's another super chat there from Inept Tones. Hey Pete, getting into pedal switchers, is the amp tone purity advantage much better than a standard pedal board with a good buffer? Well, the switcher offers a little more than just, the ability to store presets is what I think the main thing is. I do like the idea of not running through a ton of stuff. you may or may not, hear any difference. I mean, it depends how many pedals and stuff. I mean, if I had like, 15 pedals on a pedal board, I don't think I'd want to be running through them all, even if I'm buffered. And, just because there's like so much chance there for also just failure, like what one of the cables or jacks or something's bad, or a cable comes unplugged and your whole signal's gone. Whereas if you're using an amp switcher, it sort of, when you're plugged into the switcher and nothing is in line, you're just going into the switcher and out to your amp buffered. And that just seems a lot cleaner and safer on many levels to me. So it just depends is the answer. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but, and then of course the main thing for me is being able to store presets. And I'm not a pedal dance on the pedal board guy. I like to make my presets for a set or for a band, have that all dialed in, so that when I go to a gig or whatever, I go to rehearsal and stuff, I'm just hitting one button for my sounds. And here's my sound for the verse. Here's my sound for the chorus. Here's my solo. Great. And I don't have to tap dance. I've done all the work in advance. I don't have to tap dance. I've done all the work in advance. Sorry, in advance or post. What else are we talking about here? Peter's here and he says, hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks so much. Oh, there's another super chat. Hey, Pete, if two pickups have the same, what does that mean? RES and magnets. If you put them in a same guitar, can they still sound different? Like two of the same pickup? Probably not. Like, you mean, so if you took two Thorn buckers and you were to listen to one and then you were to listen to another one in the same guitar? No, I mean, I don't think so. I think they're going to sound incredibly consistent. Old ones, like, like, let's say like some people think, vintage Duncans or something sound different than the modern equivalent, or an old Super Distortion sounds different than the modern equivalent. I guess. I don't know. I've never done that A/B test. I've heard people say that, though, that I trust. So, guess it just depends. But I hope that's an answer to your question. I'm not 100% sure. Ask again if you like, if you want a more refined answer than that, please. But thank you for the super chat. Did a tour with Carlos Cavazzo. He talked a lot about his Ferrari when I was trying to get classical chord tips. Ferraris are overrated. I don't know if he has a Ferrari anymore. I wonder if he does. Let's see. Have you seen and played Warren D's amp? Besides conversion to 2203, it has some kind of Jose mod, right? Extra preamp tube. No, actually, his tone is not just a 2203. Well, you know what it is, James? It's an old Plexi that was modded into the 2203 spec, basically. So it's it's a little different because it's all point to point and all that, and probably filtering might be a little different than a 2203 because it's a Plexi. So there's going to be a couple things different. It's basically a 2203 circuit, but the key is on those amps, and I've discovered this with a few others that I've tried. With those amps, when you turn them up, that's where the magic is. So you have to play it frigging loud. It's not a 2203 with the preamp on 10 or 8 or 7 and the master on 3 or 4. It's a 2203 with the preamp on 6 or 7 and the master on 7 or 8. Does that make sense? And that was Jake's sound too, in some ways. I think Jake was an 800 guy, but he'd run the master on 10. So amazing thing happens in that circuit where, and you hear it right away. When you turn up the master, you'll hit the sweet spot where it sounds like a 2203, sounds like a 2203, sounds like and by then it's frigging loud. But you hear this high end come in, and as the power amp starts to open up, and the sort of that anemic 2203 and loose thing that they do, like the sort of loose but wimpy thing, just goes away. And then somehow, you're driving probably because you're driving the phase inverter real hard, and it flattens out or something, and something happens to the frequency response and the gain where it's just like, oh, there it is. And it sounds amazing. It's a really, really, really good sound. So, yeah. So no, there's no extra gain or anything like that. It's just frigging loud. And the extra gain is you're distorting the phase inverter, and to some degree, probably the power tubes a little bit or something, a little of that sag and voltage is, basically, because what you've got then, you don't have a Jose, but a 2203 is like a gain stage into a cold clipper circuit, into the cathode follower, right? And then out into the, master, and then the phase inverter, right? So you do have an extra gain stage in there over a plexi. It's just that cold clipping stage. So it's got a little more gain than, because it's not a very hot cold clipper stage. Now, an interesting mod, and what is to consider that cold clipping stage in a JCM 800 is to up the gain on that, which is a lot of amps. I mean, it's probably, I don't quote me on this because I'm not an expert, but on the PT100, to some degree, that is the architecture, I think, like basically a hotter second gain stage. So this isn't, news or rocket science or anything like that. People have been playing with that for a long time in amps, but you do with the plexi, when you say his tone is not just a 2203, I would just say, yeah, it's a 2203, but with, the keys, that master, and distorting that phase inverter. And you're going to hear it right away if you try that, but you need to do it loud, which means you use a load box if you don't want to, and you'll hear it right away. Clear as a bell. Keep in mind, Warren used a pretty hot, like a JB back in the day, I think. So hot pickup, amp, super loud, more than enough gain. What do I recommend for in-ears? Looking for something with built-in mics for room sound. Well, the only thing that I know of that does that is the ASI or Sensophonics. So there might be others out there now, but those are the ones that I know. Yeah. I'm always on the hunt for other things with in-ears. I mean, I like the ASI quite a bit. I've been a big proponent for it because of the mics and the whole 9 yards. I'm interested these days because I'm always looking and interested. I'm interested in the furs, which are really expensive, but I've heard nothing but great things. For audio, it's FIR, I think that's how it's spelled, and they're in Nashville, I think. They're supposed to be very user serviceable, like out on the road. If there's a problem, you can switch things out on them easier than most in-ears that are all molded and everything. But they are very, very expensive. So I'm talking thousands, so, I think you can spend $4,000 on a pair of in-ears pretty easily with them. It's bonkers. Do I want to do that? No. Am I interested? Yes. So I don't know. I just hear they're really, really clear. And that's most of the problem I have with in-ears is they're, to me, maybe I'm going deaf, but a lot of them just sound dark to me. And I don't think it's that I'm going deaf, because I like headphones. It's a lot of them just don't have clarity. They've got either a lot of bass or lots of mids, but I'm always going back 15 years with in-ears. I'm going over to the desk and asking the monitor guy on my channel, a graph on the whole channel, to boost top end, give me a little more top end, to cut low mids, and to do a high pass at about 100 or something like that. So I'm always doing this EQ on my in-ears. I wish that I could just have that clarity built right in, to the in-ears, not be electronically fixing. Sean says, looking for an IR pack recommendation to pair with my 74 JMP 50 watt that would work with the Sur reactive load IR. There's some great stuff from lots of companies, man. I mean, the basics that I would get are, the Celestion, either the Sur Greenback Backline Heroes, Sur Greenback 412 IRs. I would get those. I would get some Own Hammers. Own Hammer has a lot of, I don't even know all the stuff he's got now, but he does great stuff. And he's got, if you want a good basic place to start, I think that Guns N' Roses cabinet, it was, I think, one of Fortis's or something, is a great greenback loaded affair, I think. Or he might have just loaded different speakers in the cabinet and used, it's a Marshall cabinet, basically a B cab, but I've tried some of those and they're really good. So, maybe that. Some other people might have some other suggestions, but who's the other fellow? I'm spacing on the other popular. He was in Nashville. Why can't I remember his? I'm sorry in advance once again to this fellow, but what is the other IR company? I can't think of it right now. York. That's it. York's got a bunch. So, like York has a vintage Marshalls, or I think his Friedman cabinet is really good. Friedman has V30s and greenbacks in it, so you can get blends of the two different speakers, and you can find a lot of sort of variations on the same thing with these things, But I would try those three. Get some Yorks, get some own hammers, maybe the GNR cab with the greenbacks and stuff, and get the Celestian, either their standard 412 greenback or maybe the Sir 412 with greenbacks, and that'll pair great with that 74 JMP, I would think. Yeah. This is if you've got 2 notes, literally just downloaded the Pete Thorn IR pack from 2 notes. If you've got a 2 notes load box, that won't work with your Sir Reactive, but the 2 notes IRs that I did, I love. Those are my signature. It's my black backloaded cab that, as well as some others. Did a cabinet with some Scumebacks. 412 open back with blues, kind of a very unique cabinet. There's a bunch in there in my signature pack with those guys. Which just reminded me to do something. Remind me in 2 hours to send the email to 2 notes about the thing. Okay, yeah. Okay. Lauren says, my cats would annoy the hell out of downstairs neighbors if I had some. They terrorize my place. Yeah, these 2 guys that I've got now at my place they do fight, but like play fight, they tussle around and stuff like that, and they're pretty nuts. So it's always fun when it's at 2 a.m. too, and you're jet lagged. That's kind of neat. Does your Black Les Paul Custom still have the piezo pickup installed? It never had one. I have another Les Paul in the other room that you guys have never seen, actually, that has that pickup in it. I keep that guitar around just in case I ever need to do another gig where I've got to play acoustic on a song or something, and electric on the same song, and don't have time to change. But I played that guitar with Chris Cornell. If you can see me playing it on like the Tonight Show with Jay Leno way back in the day in like 2007 on the performance of No Such Thing. I'm playing that Les Paul. It's a cherry sunburst Les Paul with the piezo, whatever pickup, the Fishman in the bridge, and then I just would simply pull it's in the tone. I'd pull the tone and it would kick over to that pickup. So I could go from like the humbuckers to the acoustic sound, quasi sort of, simulated acoustic sound. I could really do it good now because of IRs and things. I know with, acoustic IRs and things, I'd have the ability to kind of make that happen. Which, by the way, I've got a video coming up for this thing. Has anybody tried this thing, the Tone Dexter? This is studio sound for live performance. Restores the missing body sound to all instruments. Piezo pickup. So it's kind of got an IR thing going on for acoustic guitars, basically, and warms it up and stuff like that. So I'm excited to try this. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm gonna make a video for it. One of the many that I've got to get to here. So always more to do. Yeah. Video coming for the mothership from, here it is right here. Anybody seen this thing? The mothership from Sakalis. So this is a kind of like the Friedman IR pedal. It's a preamp and has IRs and stuff built in. It's their own proprietary kind of format, but it's a dual channel with boosts, I guess, and 3 IR. It's very similar to the IRX in theory, I think. So I'm making a video for that. It sounds good, and I'll have that done within the next couple days. Yeah. Okay. Love the look and sound of the Panoverb. Hats off to Jack White. Yeah, I do too. Some people said they didn't like the look. I was like, I think it's super cool with the yellow and everything, and it's neat looking, I think. I'm arranging to visit, see a 70 straight cab with original greenbacks for $500 Canadian. Dude, I mean, all day long, get that thing if you can. That's incredible. Yeah. What else we got here? Let's see. I'm reading. One wants to see Jack White and Jack Black do Ebony and Ivory together. I think that is brilliant. That'd be great, actually. Okay. I asked Attitude of Noob Session Player 2 years ago, maybe. Now I'm playing guitar with little pay. Now I want to purchase instruments with my pay. I should do more harder. Huh? I don't understand. But hats off to you. Can you describe the differences between Venice, Italy and Venice, California? There's not a hell of a lot of similarities, actually. Almost everything's different. There's houses with some canals. That's similar. But if you've seen the Venice canals and then you'd see what you're going to see in Venice Beach, it's not quite the same thing at all, and you'd be very disappointed. But the house, Venice is cool. I mean, like the houses there's some really cool houses in Venice Beach, or canals and all that. I like Venice Beach. I mean, it's a blast, and I found this cat there the other day, so it'll always be that now. But yeah. Here's a nice comment. NPR says, Pete's a great resource. Hit the like and subscribe. Please do. If you're new here, we got 308 people online. It's great to have you all here. Very, very happy to be here. Joe says, cool amp, a little pricey for what it is. You know what? I don't really think it is pricey because consider that it's 2 amps in one. So you've got to have 2 transformers, power and output. It's probably going to be pretty heavy, I bet. But you've got a 15 and a 10. So, it's literally like, those are expensive parts. Like some of the more expensive components in an amplifier are the transformers. So that's going to up the cost. Plus it's an artist thing. So he needs to make his cut. He's getting did his R&D and came up with all the ideas and stuff. And so Fender's got to make a little money and Jack's got to make a little money. So I think it's $3,000. That's pretty on par for an artist signature amp. That's, I don't know if it, how it's built exactly and all that business, but like the construction, whatever. But I think it's fine, for the, if you look at the cost of my signature amp, it's like $2,750 for a PT15. It's got a lot of features. I mean, the IRs and the load box and everything built in is pretty value added, I would say, or $2,695, $27. I can't remember. I think it's $2,695. It's almost as much as Jack's amp. It's expensive these days, just how it is. Greetings from Norway. If anything goes to plan, I'll be a happy owner of a PT15 IR this Saturday, speaking of which. Excited to AB it with my Ecstasy 3534. Yeah, let us know what you think. Sort of similar class of amplifiers, at least in the, features set, as well as the power rating and all that stuff. I hope you get it, and I hope you like it. And thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. And I love Norway, by the way. Terrific country. Absolutely fantastic. Nambrini has a new plugin out that has the best emulation of a twin reverb I've heard. Nambrini does really good stuff. Check out Double Reverb Guitar Amplifier plugin. They're also very inexpensive for what they are. Yeah, good sounds. They've got a great AC30 plugin. One of the only. Okay. Ooh, I just hit a little wave of jet lag. I woke up at 3 a.m. today, and then I kind of dozed until about 5, but not really. I was basically up. So, anyways, just kind of, I just felt the, I got really jet lagged on this trip. Super jet lagged, like both going and coming back. Nailed. Sometimes when I went over to see AC/DC like a couple months ago, I was great. Went to Paris, I was staying up late. I was like, this is cool. And then when I came home, I don't remember being super screwed up. But this trip nailed me a little bit. I feel like I haven't slept well for like 3 weeks. Like I've been getting 5 hours of sleep a night for like 3 weeks. I really haven't slept longer than 5 hours every night for 3 weeks now, which I'm an 8-hour sleeper. Like that's how I function. Last night I was delirious, man. I was in my little local and having myself one nice cider before it was 9:30 and I started like basically hallucinating. Okay, I should probably go home. So I walked out and got an Uber, and I started to realize like I probably looked funny to the bartender, who I know. I didn't want him to think, is something wrong with Pete? So I left and went to sleep. Thanks for Japan advice a few months back. Says Pigeons Will Save the World. Booked 2 weeks in November, December. Awesome. Concerts lined up. Band made. Ooh, cool. Gakarik Spin. I don't know that band. Shoya and maybe Otoboke Beaver. You're going to get to see them, and I'm not. It's my favorite band. Damn it. I won't be there in November, December. I'll be there in October. But that's awesome. You got to go see Otoboke Beaver. I want to go to see them so bad. They're amazing. So into that band. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean. Anyway, sorry. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, go check them out because it's the coolest punk rock I've ever heard in my life. Let's see. Hi, Mr. T. Best way to soundproof the floor, apartment building. Like when you're on the ground. Well, there's only so much you can do. Soundproofing largely is sort of especially in an apartment, like there ain't much you can do, You can work on your door seals because that's something that you could do without too much modification and stuff. But the walls, apartments are not, generally speaking, apartments aren't built even like condos, they don't have the separation in between the units and the walls and stuff like that aren't quite done the same. So it's just difficult. And my answer is find an apartment that doesn't have any connecting walls. I kind of had that when I moved to Santa Monica many years ago. My first place when I lived there had one shared wall with the unit next to it. But there was like the wall, there was a bedroom and then a bathroom, and that was the shared wall. And then when you went in the main part of the house, then there was a closet, and I would put a cabinet in that closet. So there was a closet door in the wall of the closet, and then a whole bathroom, and then was the shared wall. And that was the only wall connecting me to anyone else. And then the sort of control room where I made my videos and played guitar and stuff like that was the living room of the house. And that was way far away from that wall. And so I had a cabinet buried in the closet all surround. I made a little video on like building a cabinet into a closet back then. You can still find it on YouTube. I tore out the box that you'll see in the video if you watch it because I decided I didn't like it. But I just used to then surround the cabinet with soft absorption stuff, a 112, and put it in there. It's like that cabinet sitting right there, actually, a little Bogner 112 that I have. And that's how I recorded a lot of Guitar Nerd and a lot of the videos that I did way back then. Everything up till 2012 was done. Like that, 2009, 10, 11, 12. Anyway, I never got a complaint. And so what I did, I remember one day, like I was cranking the guitar and I had it cranked up pretty loud. I was maybe attenuating like on a Faustine attenuator, maybe -8 or something like that. But it was making volume in this place. And I put on, I had a wireless, and I put on the wireless, and I went over to the next door where this person lived, and I knocked on the door. And I had my guitar, and I was playing guitar, and I go, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. Like, can you hear this?" And it was this girl, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Can you like I'm playing, and I just want to make sure I'm not going to disturb you, so can you hear this at all?" And she's like, "I don't know what you mean." And I was like, "Okay, I guess that is working then, that you couldn't hear it at all, like through so I was like, okay, good." And then I just sort of proceeded and just worked for the next few years and never had a problem in that place. So if you can find a place that where there's really no connecting walls, that's what you want to do. An apartment that's over a garage or something that has a hallway next to it on the, the connecting wall goes to a hallway and then the other units start or something like that. You got to think outside the box a little bit if you're going to apartment live and play with amps, or even just, studio monitors. Cause yeah. When do you like a Strat bridge humbucker split parallel versus or I see what you're saying, split parallel versus a Strat bridge single? I think a split humbucker can work well in the neck. That's like the Thorn bucker on my double humbucker signature model. Works fine, even with a low whine pickup, because the neck makes more energy. In the bridge, I would say if you've got a hotter pickup, it can work okay, like a JB or something, because when you split, you're still going to be like 7K or whatever. It's a fairly hot pickup. It's just when you use a PAF or something and you're in the bridge position, it's like, that's a pretty low output situation. And that's why on my guitar I chose to do parallel in the bridge by pulling that up. This guy will go parallel, and then I've got the singles, and then this is a hot pickup in this guitar. This version of my guitar has a HSS Plus in it. So the pickup would be quite a bit louder than the singles in the series mode. But in parallel, it balances perfectly with the singles, and I like the sound. That's the other thing, is that it's not just it's not like a compromised sound. I actually really love the sound of the humbucker in parallel. So, yeah. So, his sneeze. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, that Liverpool was crazy good in Pete's demo. It really, really was. Love that amp. Love that. Love that. Love that. Jose, thank you very much for the super chat. You're too kind. Thank all you guys for the super chats today. Appreciate you. Let's see. Okay, what else we got here? What else have we got here? There's another super chat from Jose again. Oh, you already did this. You didn't have to. Honest opinion on the Nano Cortex. I think it's great. And I'll tell you, I do want to talk about this for a second, because there's some comments, man. Like a lot of the comments that I've seen on the gear page and stuff is just whinging about this thing, And there is this thing. I was talking with like Dave Friedman about this the other day and stuff. It's like, it's mainly in the modeling world that I see this. Not everything has to do everything. Like a Phase 90 doesn't have overdrive sounds in it, for a very blunt example, right? A distortion pedal doesn't also do tube screamer sounds. It does the sound that it does, and I think people have gotten so lazy and used to this like idea that like everything has to do everything. So what do I mean by that? Well, this thing, people are like, I can't believe they didn't build plug-in compatibility into it. It's not even, it doesn't run models. It's a capture box. So this is made to do captures and host captures, that style of amp sound stuff, and host 5 IRs. So it's 25, I think it's 5 captures and 5 IRs and 25 presets or something like that. I think that's, or is it 5 banks of 5 presets each? I can't remember. Somebody go like how many? Somebody double check and Google it for me right now, so I don't have to do it. How many presets can you have in here? How many captures and how many IRs? I think it's 5 IRs you can load, and then you can load up a bunch of captures and then make a certain number of presets. And then there's simple effects built in that you can't change the order of. So there's a gate and there's a pitch transposer, and then there's a mod section that has a few different type of mod effects. There's a delay section and there's a reverb section, and they're ordered in a certain way, and that's not changeable. But that's a lot of stuff. It does a lot of stuff. It's $549, and it's pretty damn full featured with a little. I mean, high. Like what the? I don't know. When people are like, it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that, and they miss the mark on this and they miss the mark on that. It's like, okay. Here's the other thing. You can't make it do everything that a quad Cortex does, because then you're cannibalize your own product, right? Like they obviously want the quad Cortex to be the flagship. So people are like, it doesn't have a touchscreen. You don't need a touchscreen on it. You don't need the touchscreen on it. It's got your presets in there. A lot of things don't have touchscreens. Just consider that you can have all your presets, and you're like, oh yeah, here's my bank of boxes, my bank of cleans, my bank of Marshalls or whatever, my captures or whatever, and I'll just go there and then load this one up and then store. It's easy. It's like nothing to it. I don't know. All things don't have to do absolutely everything, because then what's the point of having a quad Cortex, or what's the point of having the full-blown Axe-Fx? The FM3 doesn't do everything that the Axe-Fx 3 full rack version does or whatever, right? Because if it did, then what would you need the big one for? And if they could pack all that into, whatever. So my honest opinion is I really like it. For what it is, it's like, I think it's cool. It's kind of a Tone X competitor, which is also great. The Tone X is really cool. It's amazing what they're doing these days. But it's that old Louis CK thing, if you've never seen it, that whole everything's amazing and nobody's happy, his whole skit on which is incredible, I think. And Lars, it was on Conan O'Brien years ago, and he's talking about how when internet first came out on planes, and how a lot of times it wouldn't work, So he's like, this guy sitting beside me, it's like the very first time we're on a plane where there's internet, and it's just come out, and he tries to log in, it's not working. And he goes, this is bullshit. And he's like, man, this guy was so ready to be pissed off and just so mad about something that he didn't even know existed 15 minutes ago. It's give it a minute, like before it becomes consistent. And we all do it, but as life becomes more and more about convenience and packing more into smaller and smaller things, it's got to be difficult if you're in that end of the business where you're developing these products that you'll spend probably a couple of years on, but you do have limitations. You don't want to cannibalize your flagship models and all that. So you make it a certain way and it does a certain thing. And then everybody just gives you shit about it, that it doesn't do everything under the sun and wash your dishes for you too while it's at it, So I don't like that, but I don't know. I'm a little old school. Like, I grew up in a time where we didn't have any of this stuff. It was just simple pedals. A MIDI verb was like, if you were lucky, I had a Digitech DSP 128 that did delay and reverb and some effects. And I had a 2-channel preamp, and that was my rig, and that was fairly sophisticated, but it was big and heavy and, 295 power amp and all that, And then, the generation right before me was, Boss and MXR pedals and Electro Harmonics and Marshalls and Voxes and Fenders and Laney's and stuff. And that was it. And you had a great big amp, and nobody knew what a buffer was, or, it was like, now everybody just wants everything. So anyway, Mothership. Thanks, Pete. Really interested in this pedal. Well, yeah, video coming this week for sure. And that's my next video. So getting it done. I've already started on it. So I started before I went to Italy. I had hoped to finish before I went to Italy, but that was wishful thinking. I just ran out of time. There is another super chat. Philip says, cheers, Pete. Can you give us some details on the new PT50? Recently tied your PT50 IR and loved it. 212 best cab I played. That's awesome. Thanks. Okay. Basically, it'll be 3 channels. They'll be a little more versatile than what we've done in the past. Not that it wasn't versatile before, but what you will see is the ability to voice the channels in a way that we haven't done yet. That'll be both gain and tone will be, they'll be quite flexible. So I'll just say that, and it's of course going to have an amazing effects loop. We're still working on all the details, as far as other stuff goes, but we're getting there, and it's going to be really neat. Be a great gigging player's tool for sure. Just the next step of the next step in the evolution. It'll definitely have everything. I hope it's got everything the PT15 has, everything that the PT100 has, and more. That's what I hope, and like significantly more as far as the tones on tap and flexibility. So thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Okay. I brought up the Pano verb in an amp repair channel yesterday. Everybody poo-pooed it because of Fender reliability. I don't know. It's, who cares? If it sounds good and it's got a warranty, whatever. I think that building things to last, yes, it's super important, but we don't know exactly how it's built. We'd have to get inside it and see. And I don't know. Once again, everybody complains about everything all the time, so whatever. Thoughts on the SSH Plus? Does it clean up well? Well, I put it in parallel and it does. That's put a series parallel and thank me later. Just a switch. The thing about a hot pickup is you paint yourself into a corner a bit because they get darker, which is great with distortion because it's the annoying high end you don't want to be there in there isn't there. It's not coming out of the guitar. It's a darker sounding pickup. So it's not just about push from output. It's about the tone of the pickup warms up in a way that's pleasing to us, I think, with distortion. So, but that doesn't necessarily bode well for like clean sounds. Of course, if you're using a treble bleed, it's going to do a certain thing when you roll down and cutting the glassy top end and stuff like that. But it's still not going to quite sound like a PAF or something when you roll down. But pulling the series parallel switch going to parallel then gives you all this high end. So that's what I would do, in your classic S. Put the series parallel on the bottom tone pot, and you just trust me, you'll tell me it's not a sound you don't want to use all the time. I think it's great. One of my favorite sounds in my guitars is the parallel sound. In Fight for Fighting, when I play with those guys, I use it all the time. Like, not all the time, but half the time I'm on the bridge pickup, it's switching into parallel with Fight for Fighting, and I think it sounds great. Thanks for the super chat again there. Appreciate it. I still believe this Soldano Astro is the best deal in amps out there. 7 channels, MIDI, IRs. It does do a lot, that little amp, for sure. Once again, these days we live in a time of abundance. The concept of the JW is very cool, but you're right, not really that expensive for what it is. Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's on par for, being a signature amp and having some unique features and having basically 2 amplifiers in one. I mean, it's 2 power amps, 2 output transformers, 2 power transformers, right? It's got to be. So unless they're doing something that I don't understand, but if it's stereo and there's 2 amps in it, there needs to be all those parts. So that adds cost. Have you ever played any of the Rukongas guitars? That rings a bell, but I'm not remembering what that is exactly, what those guitars are. So maybe, I'm not sure. You've been in multiple time zones. Your internal clock is cuckoo. Maybe I'm just cuckoo in general, though. Could be. I saw Dave Gilmer in Brighton on Friday. It was amazing. That's awesome, Tony. I know he was doing a because I actually got invited and I couldn't go because I had to come back here. But I know he was doing a kind of dress rehearsal thing in Brighton the other day. So maybe that was the day before before the actual show. Or did you go to the dress rehearsal thing that I heard about that I could have gone to? Could have, if I'd just made my way to Brighton. How was it? Tell us more details. Well, you said it was amazing, but are you going to catch Gilmore on this tour? I'm not. I don't have tickets, and they're very expensive too. I had this opportunity where a friend invited me to the dress rehearsal that, and I just couldn't get to. I was on my way back from Italy on flight, and the whole, I did go through Heathrow, and like, had I been able to, maybe I would have, but I didn't. So now it's too late, and it's not worth talking about. Don't even want to go there, lamenting about the past. Lauren's got some ideas for apartments. You can build a sound barrier for the floor using plywood and tennis balls. Really? Plywood and tennis balls and zip ties. So, like, really? I can't quite picture that. Do you have photos or anything? But you are the man when it comes to stuff like that. So Lauren would know. Talk amongst yourselves about soundproofing apartments. Let's see. This is all true. Airspace between wall or floor surfaces is the trick to soundproofing a room inside a room concept. Yeah, if you can build a wall, have an air gap, and then another wall, you're going to be a large, amount of the sound is going to stay in the room, and whatever makes it to that air gap, and then another wall, So that's the concept. I would just say seals of doors is major. So you can do all this work on like walls and green glue and all this crap, and then if your door doesn't seal right, it's all useless. It's like, to me, and that was proven to me and shown to me. So my doors are great in this place, even though it's not, I don't have full-blown double wall studio construction here, but I do have a 4x4, 2x4, 2x4 I don't know what the heck this wall is, but anyway, it's a fairly thick wall with 2 doors. It's a single wall, but there's drywall on one side with green glue in the middle and 3 layers on the other side with green glue in the middle, filled with the rock wool or whatever that crap is in the middle, 702 or whatever, 703, whatever the insulation is. And then my doors are sealed properly with really, really good neoprene style seals all the way around. So when you close the doors, they are tight against that neoprene, and that blocks everything, high end and whatever, is where you run into trouble is bass, because bass travels. So if the seals will handle the high end, and then the bass frequencies, that's where you really need the air gap and the dual walls and stuff like that. If you're using a lot of bass, because that stuff travels through walls and you just need air and mass to basically. So when we're talking about this and we're talking about apartments, it becomes very like, well, you're not going to modify an apartment really. It's very difficult. If you're in an apartment and you need to, you're hell bent on playing amps and stuff like that, you might consider getting like an ISO box type of situation to put a cabinet inside and closing that up. Because they're sort of designed to be a room within a room. It's just a cabinet within a room, sort of built inside a box or whatever, right? And then you seal it up, and then I just never really liked the sound of those things. And now I think with load boxes and IRs, you can get basically there. Actually, you can get a better sound. I have no qualms about saying it's superior. PT-15 get you great recorded guitar sounds, through headphones or whatever, superior to most ISO boxes or any of that kind of stuff that you're going to spend money on. Microphones, mic pre's, you've got the volume issue, all that stuff. Why mess around? Don't. Just go the load box and IR route, unless you have the ability to have a room with a little bit of volume, both space and decibels, and multiple mics and stuff like that. And then you can I still have that here because I like it. I like mic and cabs and stuff like that. I don't do everything through IRs and stuff like that. I most of the stuff I do is actually through a cabinet, but I have another room that's dedicated to that, and I have the ability to do that. That's part of why I keep a separate space. If I didn't need to do that, I wouldn't even really need to be here. I could just probably work at home or something, or no, maybe not. I've got too much stuff. Like, I don't have room for all this crap at home, but you know what I mean? Like, the main reason why I keep a separate space is because I feel like I want to be able to record cabinets and have a dedicated studio room and things where volume isn't an issue. So yeah. Wonder if the Soldano X88IR will ever finally be released. I didn't even know they'd kind of talked about that or announced it, but it is a thing. Prefer not having IR tech in there, but whatever. Well, I don't think there's any downside. Look at it this way: what Friedman has done, and then it's all sort of boutique. So there's some shared knowledge stuff going on there for sure. But what they're doing is pretty impressive, I think, as far as the IRX goes. I know they've got some new software out there for the IRX. I heard it, and I think it's very, very good. And what they're doing with IRs, with sort of a little bit of sort of power amp simulation modeling in preamps and things like that is very, very, very good. So, when you say you wouldn't want IR tech in there, I mean, sort of why not? It's just value added. It's a little marketing for you there, but it's, you give it don't poo-poo it before you try it, because it's it's cool. Their whole I've never tried that particular. I know what you're talking about, but I believe it's coming. I just don't know when or something like that. I didn't know it was out there. I wouldn't have mentioned it if you hadn't first, but it's your funeral, not mine. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't want to get in trouble. I don't want you to get in trouble. I want everybody to get along. Did you ever use an actual ISO cab? Yeah, I have. I've tried the Grendel, I think it was called, or Grambel or Grendel, something like that. Grendel, I think it was called. And then I heard the Rivera, just supposed to address some of the issues. And then I built a cabinet box. There's a video on YouTube that I put up of me building a box into a closet and stuff. And I tell you what, any of them, they all have this sound that sounds like this. So this is the sound of the cabinet in the room, and then you put it in the sealed box and it does this to the sound. It just has this all mid-range, this big 400 hertz kind of cloudy thing, which just makes sense. I mean, you've got all this volume happening inside a closed space, and it just doesn't ever quite sound right to me. So yeah, I've actually bought one that I had to return because I didn't like it. And it was one of those, it looks like a rectangle, and then the top flips open and the speaker's in there with a microphone. And, I right away, it was like, I heard it in the room with the mic and everything. And then I closed the top and compared the sound, and it was like, oh, that's not good. It does this thing that, there's no, yeah, they don't sound great. There's just no, it's the physics of it, So I'm going to move down through the chat a little bit here. There's another super chat there. I'll grab that in a sec. Guitars and amps for life says, I've used an ISO cab. It's an oversized box, multiple layers of Orlex foam, maybe to fit 412 and cab. Sounds awesome. If it's an oversized box, I've seen those. Like, for instance, I saw Jerry Cantrell's. He used to use them. It was a big road case that then they just close the lid on and it had a 412 in it and the mics. That probably works okay. You know, like if it's big, it's got to be big though. Oversized box is the key, you know. The ones that I've tried are small, you know, very small, compact, one speaker, that kind of thing. But you can, you know, get these devices or boxes or whatever from companies like A&S cases. You know, I think they make them and they've got like a XLR jacks on the inside and outside, so you can wire your mics. And, you know, they make them specifically for this reason. I remember the end kind of has a curved piece of foam on it, so the sound isn't hitting a solid square, or you know, so they made it a little bit tried to treat it, you know, acoustically on the inside and made it less standing waves or something. And it, you know, that probably works pretty good. Big box, you know, the key is big. That's the key. Tim Pierce, even, I remember him saying that in his, you know, with his ISO closet that he's built under, you know, in his garage. He's like, the key is big as possible. And he's like, I would have built mine bigger if I could have, you know, when I did it in retrospect. So I remember him telling me that. And it's pretty big. So, you know, just want to, you know, less standing waves and, you know, chance for that sound to bounce back and frequencies to build up and all that stuff that you try and avoid when you're trying to record a cabinet, you know. So, yeah. Let's see here. I've seen people bashing the hell out of the Nano Cortex. I didn't expect it to do much, but wanted it to at least have an effects loop. Why, though? What do you need the effects loop for? Just run out of it and go into your pedals or whatever. I mean, I guess, okay, it could have a loop somewhere in the middle or whatever, and it'd become maybe, but you know, I don't know. I mean, like, it doesn't really matter, you know. It's like, just use it for what it is, and then run your, like, think of this as like an amp box, like an amp sounds box with a few simple effects. Now, if you want different delay or different reverb or different mod, just come out of the output and go into your pedals, and then come out of those into a DI or whatever you're going to run to, you know, just like you would on an amp. You don't need a loop, you know. It's like, the reason for a loop is to interface effects in an amplifier that where you want to put them after the preamp but before the power amp. You don't do that with something like this because the capture is like the whole, like, if you're doing a direct head capture into this, so it's just the amplifier, and then you're going to run out, say, into a power amp and a guitar cabinet, use this as the amp, come out of it into your effects, and come out of the effects into a power amp. Now, why would you need a loop? Because you've already sort of, you're putting the effects in the place where the loop would be in a guitar amplifier, right? If you're using it as a full sound with the mics and cabinet and everything built in or baked into the sound, come out of this, go into the effects, which, you know, then now you're dependent largely what you would be anyway if it was a loop. You're depending on the path through the thing and whether it's got a dry path like Strymon's doing, stuff like that. But, you know, that's essentially like how you would do it in the studio. You know, you'd have your baked in sound of, you know, cabinet, amp, everything, and then you'd add effects to that. Well, that's what you're doing. You're coming out of this and going into your effects and then into a DI or whatever you're going to, you know, a powered cabinet, whatever it is. You don't need a loop. There's no point. The only time you might need a loop, I could see, is if you're going to use the internal effects and you're like, well, I wish I could put some stuff before those effects because I really want to use the reverb in this, or I really want to use the delay and the reverb in this, but I'd love to put a chorus before them, but I can't because of, you know, and I really have to have it before the preamp or after the preamp and before the effects. That's what I mean. Then I'd be like, okay, I could see a need, but you know, people like in an IRX, they have a loop, but you don't really need to use it. It's like, you can just come out of them into the effects. And then, like, the reason the loops were put in amplifiers in the first place was because there was nowhere else to patch in the effect. You can't do that because you got to come out of the amplifier right into a speaker, a cabinet, right? There's no other way to do it. So they put an effect loop in the amplifier so that you could patch in your effects. But with pedal things, there's no, just run into the effects. Doesn't matter. So I don't know. I don't know. Blah. Sorry, do I sound frustrated? Yeah, some people are just never happy, says Todd. Well, people sort of like to complain in the modeling world about things, that's for sure. But, it's like I question sometimes how much, I've seen people recently complaining about neural DSP effects. I'm doing all my effects for my clinic coming up, inspired by the tone. The whole point is supposed to be inspiring guitar sounds. And I'm using a fair amount of effects, like really piling it on in a couple of the sounds. Would I do it if the effects were substandard? I mean, when I've got a friggin' ton of other stuff, no, I would use other stuff. But because it's all in one box, it is convenient, and I think the effects are up to par. I mean, if you come to the clinic and you're like, well, that sounded like crap, well, just maybe let me know, and I'll have to revise my thinking about what I think sounds good and doesn't. But I've shown a couple people the sounds. They're like, that sounds amazing. That sounds friggin' great. And he's like, okay, then there's no problem, I just don't understand. I mean, people like to complain. That's it. Some people are just never happy. I don't know. You're right. It is frustrating for me, though. I do think they do a good job, and the people are beating them up for, I love neural DSP stuff. I like all that. I think, we are talking about Lexus versus Infiniti versus Mercedes versus BMW versus when we're talking about Axifexes and Helixes and Kempers and Tone X's, and it's just a golden time. All the stuff sounds, if you can't get a good sound out of this stuff these days, that is, pretty darn close to the real thing, or amplifiers and all the effects and everything that you can do. If you can't make a record with this stuff, or, then I don't know what to tell you. Cause, back in the day, we did, juice extractors and heads or something, and, or Palmers, and it was like that. Nowadays you've got this stuff where you can plug in and basically make a record, with one device, and people still complain about it. So it's crazy. It's crazy times. It's crazy town. Okay. Looking through the chat here. I finally started to get my head around the Tone X yesterday. I really enjoyed it once I started figuring it out. For my needs, the HX Stomp is a better option, but the Tone X is great for what it's doing. Yeah, and that's the thing. Some things are going to do things a little more like, oh, I like what this does. No question, the HX Stomp is a highly capable, impressive device for what it is. It's basically the kitchen sink. I mean, it's got everything in there that most people would need, and it's pretty amazing. So, still holds up too. It's been out for a number of years now, and it's really, really good. Yeah. TGP is a good source for a laugh, says John. If 90% of those dudes played as much as they piss and moan, the place would be full of shredders. There's a lot of pissing and moaning going on. It's a great forum in many ways. I still enjoy it. I've been a member for well over 20 years at this point, going on 25 years, I think, since the beginning, basically. I always thought it was a little uptight at times, the moderation and stuff like that. But to their credit, it kind of made it work. The fact that a lot of other forums that go south, people get really nasty, and what I'm talking about, just get horrible. But so maybe it needed to be that way. The sort of tight moderation and no tolerance for BS seems to have worked for them, and it's still a good resource. And I like many things about it. But yeah, there's a lot of just the whinging gets annoying sometimes. If it's not for you, I mean, it doesn't mean it's a bad piece of gear. If this thing's like, oh, I really want a touch screen and stuff like that, but I can see, it's like, it's kind of amazing what it does, like the amount of stuff it does. And amazing what a Tone X does, they've really, you can get this thing, and then you can basically have the sound, at least, one version of it, of my 72 Marshall and my top hat. And you'll hear in the video, they sound, I don't know, exactly the same as my amp. I think, like, super close enough for me. OBS. Have you ever played a Park amp, vintage or newer Mitch Colby one? I love what Mitch is doing with them. I've played a few old ones. Yeah, they're basically Marshalls. Essentially Marshalls. Jaws bugging me. My friend Yogi, he's got a 75, an old one, and I've heard his, and I've never heard one that like totally knocked me out. I know George Lynch has one that's supposed to be one of his favorite amps. It's supposed to be amazing, but I haven't heard that one. But like most Marshalls, it's like you hear good ones, you hear some that are like, you hear some that are like, wow, that's amazing. So all you need is the small tone one. I think you mean the Tone X little baby one, and an HX Stomp, and you kind of have all worlds in one small package. Yeah, I mean, then you can do all the captures and everything if you want to, get an amp sound that's something that's not capable, by the HX Stomp. Then you just add the little tone pedal and Tone X1 pedal, and away you go. When's the new album coming out? Oh man, I really am overdue to do one, so it's gonna happen. We've got so much like just stuff on the plate like right now with the clinics and stuff, which I'm really excited about doing. I might take a couple of these tunes from the clinic and actually just expand them into full songs for a record, actually, because I came up with 4 new ideas for the clinic, and then I'm doing 2 covers, so that's 6 musical ideas I'm going to cover in the clinic, and then also do some other parts just on various guitar sounds and things where I'm doing a little delay demonstration. I might add to it and come up with a little bit more too, so we'll see. But anyways, yeah. Okay. In your expert opinion, which non-Marshall amp sounds the most Marshall? Well, there's so many these days. I mean, Friedman's SL68 right back there. There's a ton. My Implexador was great 20 years ago. My Top Hat. So there's a lot of people building Marshalls out there now. The Germino, Germinos are terrific. Maybe Germino's the closest in some ways to every detail, like the way they were built, as far as like point to point or whatever, or tag, like and the way he sort of chooses to do things, it's less sort of variation or any kind of modern features. I mean, not that he doesn't have amps that don't have modern features, but I know he's just widely respected, I think, for what he does by folks like Sir and because I'm just saying that SL68 like has there's a few features on it that like old Marshalls don't. If you want like the total, just here's what it was, like the Monterey or whatever from Germino, they're very, very historically, every single detail, I think, the filtering, the caps, and the values and things like that. But whether you get a Friedman Plex or a SL68 or 67 or a Germino, or they're all great options that are you're going to be able to ballpark get them all in the same zone pretty easily, because it's just circuits. It's like Marshalls aren't. I think years ago I used to think, oh, there's the magic ones that are like, and maybe there is great transformers and things like that. But I've heard plenty of new amps that sound as good or maybe better than a lot of vintage ones that weren't maintained or could maybe be recapped, or so. That's just my opinion. Every now and then you come across a really special old one where it's like, ooh, that sounds so good, like, but why do 2 of them sound different? I guess it's transformers and stuff. I think my 72 50 watt sounds awesome. I've heard a couple that sound better that I've had in this room, where it's just like 10% better, where you're like, oh, why is this one better than mine? What is it that's, the magic thing? But I've got a really good one, it sounds really good. But when I've, you put them 2 on a switcher and you go back and forth, it's every now and then there'll be one that's like, ooh, that's good, So what time is it? 1:30, almost 1:23. When did I start? So I'm gonna go at least another, I'll go another 30 or so here. Ever tried a full range speaker installed in a tube amp? No, doesn't sound like I would like it though. That high-end roll-off, we need it. Do you need effects loops in both amps building stereo rig, or can you get away with just one amp with a loop? If you're running into the front of both amps, then you don't need loops. If you can't really do the loop send thing to your effects and then return to the one return of that amp and then go out into the front of another amp. That won't really work. So the answer is either run into the front of both amps, don't use the loop on the one amp, even though it has a loop, or get another amp that has a loop. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What else we got here? Does the parallel sound work with the second position on an SSH guitar? It does. So like I noticed on my guitars, because I didn't know that, like exactly how they were wired, but so I don't know if it's a limitation or what, but if you put the bridge pickup into parallel and now you go to the number 2 position on the switch, I believe it doesn't coil tap now. This pickup stays parallel and this one is single coil. If I push this down, the sound noticeably changes, gets ever so slightly thinner, which tells me that then this is tapping to single and this is single. So you can definitely hear the change. So as soon as you put this pickup in parallel, it won't tap anymore when I go to position 2. They're very, very close sounds, though. The pickup in parallel or the pickup tapped in position 2 are very, very close when combining it with the middle. Just a little bbit less output and a little more scooped sounding in the 2 singles mode, because of course then you're getting this. It's also you're going to be when you get the two coils in parallel and the single, you're sensing a wider part of the strings than when you're just using this inside coil, of course, coil tapped with this one. So it sounds a little different. So the output is a little different and the tone is a little different. It's very close though, to not really that different sounding, but just a little bit. There's another super chat there. I gotta grab that in a sec. From your personal experience, could you please share your thoughts on touring versus studio gigging? Oh man, well, I like a balance. I really enjoy both. And when I do too much of one or too much of the other and not, an even balance of the two, I feel it and I'm off a little bit, because I really like being creative, writing songs, producing stuff, recording, and I like being home. I love traveling and I equally love being home. These days, I really enjoy it. I like sleeping in my own bed and all that stuff. So I would just say that touring is an amazing thing, and the ability to travel all around, see the world, and experience all the things you get to do when you do that is incredible. But it's also amazing to be home, and if you want a family life, it's always a difficult thing to balance. I've got plenty of friends that have kids and wives, and they tour, they make it work. But there's an equal number probably that don't make it work, that are divorced or single or just never got married or whatever, that kind of thing. So it's a difficult thing. There's all those challenges of being away all the time and traveling and all the stuff that comes with that. Studio gigging, studio work is like, to me, I don't really have I do sessions for people and stuff like that sometimes. Still, majority of what I consider my studio work though is YouTube and doing stuff here that you guys see me do, the videos for stuff. That's kind of my weird little studio career. But there isn't a lot of other, like there's not a lot of money in music anymore. That's the hardcore, in original music, streaming, and it's still there and people are making it work and stuff like that. But I'm finding most of it is like peripheral to music, people selling t-shirts or selling, whatever, to playing gigs and all the stuff that comes along with that, and different little peripheral ways to make money around, nobody's buying records anymore. So that sort of filters down to the doing sessions. And I mean, it could still be done. I know plenty of, Sean Hurley or different people that are very active making money playing in the studios and stuff, but it's a hard go sort of, so that's some random ass thoughts on all that. There's a super chat I'm going to grab right here in a sec. What are some of your favorite albums in terms of production? Okay. Back in Black is flawless. It's not a bad note or sound or anything on that record. I love the Ted Templeman Van Halen productions, um, all the way through '84. I mean, I think those early, the sound of those records is really unique and cool. Like he really captured them in a way that was amazing. Um, uh, I would say Queen, like Roy Thomas Baker. Obviously, they achieved some magic. Um, the Beatles, of course, I mean, they broke the wall down as far as, the recording engineers literally were engineers in lab coats, and you were only allowed to place a microphone a certain way, in 1963, in Abbey Road Studios, it needs to be this far from the amp, and you only use this kind of microphone in this position. It was literally like, that's the way they would record. And luckily the Beatles found George Martin, and he was a willing, to break the rules, because it really was rules. And they broke the wall down, with all this kind of stuff and distorting, a few years later, you've got Revolution, distorting the hell out of the console and stuff like that. It's kind of amazing, that the progress that was made and stuff, and and then we got, tape flanging and all kinds of, reverse stuff, flipping the tape over and all the things that they did. So we got to hand it to the Beatles, and George Martin. Glenn Johns, Andy Johns, amazing, rock, from, Glenn obviously worked on the White Album as well, but the Who and Zeppelin and, incredible sounding stuff. The one record Andy did with Van Halen is a great sounding record, and different than the Ted production. I really like that sound for those guys, which is the FUCK record, right? I loved like Trevor Horn, like the 80s. 90125. Yes, that was killer. Peter Collins with Rush. Actually, the early Rush records, all the Terry Brown Rush. For me, it was around. I know that most people are like moving pictures. The first Rush that I really got into, just because of my age, was Signals, and I love the sound of that record. Like, I love the warmth when you listen to Digital Man and Analog Kid and Losing It, and those songs I love the sound. It's got this analog, the sound of the synths and the drums and the bass and the guitars and the vocals, and there's this warmth to it that I feel like I'm in the studio at La Studio when they're making that record, in the way the videos, maybe it was just the whole package, but the sound is so, I don't know, it's like a warm blanket to me of like the Terry Brown Rush stuff was so great. But then what they did just after was terrific too. But yeah, Owner of a Lonely Heart, for example, that blew my mind when it came out, because I've never, the sampling and the orchestra hits and all that stuff, and then the guitar sounds, it was like, oh my God. So that production was incredible. Avalon by Roxy Music sounds, once again, it's got that kind of like that blanket enveloping sound that is so amazing. A lot of Clear Mountains mixes were like the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up. That sounds incredible to me. And he of course did Avalon as well, mixed that. Bowie, Let's Dance, incredible. A lot of, I feel like for example, the Heart records that came out that were done at Mushroom in Vancouver, Heart, like if you listen to the sound of Crazy on You or Barracuda, or that stuff is recorded so well that it sounds so good. Like, recording got so good by the mid 70s to late 70s, right before everything started sounding a little colder into the 80s and stuff. But I still like a lot of 80s stuff. Like, I love 80s productions, but the late 70s, when we consider the sound of whatever, like Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, or some Steely Dan records, or like I say, Avalon, or the stuff that was happening, and then those Heart records. God, man, the sound of those records is just like, and Rush, with Terry Brown, still recording analog, but people were then syncing two 24-track machines together with SMPTE and stuff like that. So you had the ability to layer things, but maybe 24 tracks was enough, like once we went beyond that, maybe not, but But it was, the fact that you could do that, and then the sound of those, APIs and Neve consoles, and where it had gotten by, like, let's say 1977 or 8 or 9 or 80, sonically was really cool, really cool. Now we get into the 80s, and then some of the productions. I mean, I love the sound of the Pretenders and Prince, and like there's so much good stuff that happened in the 80s too. But there was that kind of cold thing that happened too. And then the Sony 3348 was this, one of the first. It was a 48-track digital machine. Maybe when people started making music on those, then I'll give you two examples of 3348 records. Love It for Sting by the Scorpions, and George Michael, Father Figure and stuff like that. Those were whatever record that was. Two very different examples, but they were both done on that machine, and they both have that sound to me of that 80s digital. It's like, I don't know. There's a distance to it and a coldness to it. Great songs. I mean, I love both that. I love the Scorpions, and I like that George Michael album too, the Father Figure stuff. That's a great song, but there's this cold thing to the production that I wish all that stuff had been done on a nice Studer A800 with a Neve board. Sounds better to me. If you listen to the difference between the Love It for Sting album and, say, Scorpions Blackout, yeah. As we get into the 90s, I think Super Unknown is the Sgt. Pepper's of the 90s. That was Soundgarden becoming full potential, and Michael Beinhorn giving him full, his due for partnering with them and coming up with the sound of that record. It's an incredible sounding record, I think. And I loved the sound in the late 90s of like Urban Hymns by The Verve. Really cool stuff going on there, and Radiohead was doing incredible things, Kid A and OK Computer, and as we got into the 2000s, I'm not as into the early 2000s stuff. I don't like the sound of a lot of records from 2000 till 2010. There's a lot of problems, I think, that happened in that era. Once we get into the White Stripes, being maybe an exception, and the rawness and stuff like that, but there was a lot of tuning going on. That was when I really started my career, and I saw the records because I was in the studio, working, and I saw what people were doing. Pro Tools had full on come into play, and Beat Detective had come into play, and Auto-Tune had come into play, and things were starting to get tuned and beat detected and edited in a way that I think was detrimental it did a disservice to a lot of the music at the time. It was just kind of like, it was the opposite of what, say, like CADDIS or Queens of the Stone Age were doing, like with heavy music, and Soundgarden certainly was, with new metal and stuff. Everything had to be so in tune, and like it was very like, it was cold and calculated in a way that, like, Josh Homme or whatever never would have cared about or done. It was like part of the sludge of Black Sabbath and stuff that those then later bands sort of took, that were influenced by them and held on to, was really important. A lot of heavy music and stuff and all kinds of music was getting sanitized so much in that 2000 to 2010 or 11 or 12 period that I think it was like kind of uninteresting. But then we had Amy Winehouse, and Amy Winehouse, those records sound like, it's like, oh, finally somebody's, it was like a throwback to, an old sound, and just good musicians playing in a room together and mixed with warmth, and the performance is left intact, and not, all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's something that's not auto-tuned to death. And, I don't think there's any going on, or editing, and maybe there was, but, if there was, it was done tastefully, So, and then you want to talk about okay, so I'll end it. I've been talking about this forever, but yes, it was, I like the question. So Beck's Morning Phase album, I think, is one of the greatest sounding albums I've ever heard in my life. And it was done in 2013, won the Grammy for album of the year that year. If you haven't heard it, listen to Morning Phase. It's Beach Boys, Brian Wilson level beautiful. incredible sounding record. You know, the production of the record and the strings. You know, his dad was a famous string arranger and stuff. So, you know, and he's an amazing artist. I think Beck. He's all over the map and kind of like you can't pin him down. I love that about him. He's sort of a throwback, you know, in many ways to artists when they were true. You know, he's an artist. He's got a lot of different sides to him that and they're all him, and I love that. So that record, Morning Phase, one of my favorite records of all time. Just a beautiful record. Put it on a drive, and just some of the sounds are just the sound of the vocals and the reverb and stuff, and the way it tails out, and it's just like this. Get the chills thinking about it. Actually, it's like such a great sounding record. So one of my favorites. Just stands alone as a incredible record, but also just sheer production value and amazing. All right, that's enough of that. Oh yes, met your buddy Yogi Lanic. That's my pal from Croatia. Came to my gig and listened to a few songs. Great guy. Told him to recommend Croatia to you. I hit him up the other day when I was in Venice because I was like, hey, I'm right across the Adriatic or whatever. Like, why don't you come over and have dinner with me? You know, he was in Croatia and stuff. So, but yeah, I've never been there. I've never been to that country. I'd love to go, you know, sometime. Looks beautiful. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. Okay. Tim Pierce should do a video with a decibel meter in his famous ISO room, 110, 115, probably, you know. So when do we get Pete Thorn IRs? Well, I've already got a pack for 2 notes that's out. So those do exist. I'd love to do more though. I did do something with one company and they never got released, and I don't know what's happened with that, but I guess I should hit them up and ask. But you know, maybe it's time to consider doing another one. Celestion Speaker Mitch Pro is deeply frustrating. Amazing sounding product turned abandonware. Yeah, it really was good, you know, and then I'm not sure, you know, maybe I don't know the ins and outs of making a product like that and supporting it. And I had, you know, I think it was the potential's there for sure, right? But yeah, you kind of summed it up. You know, I haven't investigated it recently to check it out. So in my mind, when it comes to IRs, I mean, just get a good IR host that's simple and load up the Celestions or the Yorks or whatever and have a little like library of your favorites and know your go-tos, and then just don't think about it beyond that. There's a beautiful thing about, we've talked a little bit today, maybe a lot, about products and expecting a lot, and like how everything doesn't need to do everything. And there's something beautiful about the Sur reactive load in that it's just got a collection of IRs that sound really good in it. It's a great sounding reactive load. You plug it in. There's no, you know, editor or, you know, like effects or ability to add all this stuff or confusion. You know, it's 16 IRs on a simple knob that you just turn, and then you get on to recording, you know? And it's, the reality is it's everything you need, you know? I mean, not effects and stuff like that, but when it comes to guitar cabinet sounds, for most people, most situations, it's in there. And you don't have to load other ones, and you don't have to ever hook it up to a computer, and you don't have to Bluetooth it to your phone, and it's just there. And you could record for the rest of your life probably with that thing and make great sounding music. And IR length and, you know, a million options and whatever, be damned, you know, just forget about it and make music. Write a better song. Write a better song. If you're worried about that IR, you need this certain IR to have a bet. Forget about it. You know, honestly, like enough with, you know, I know it's like, it's the dichotomy here is, you know, and the irony and the hypocrisy coming out of my mouth is because I basically, I mean, I do things with gear and manufacturers, and this is what I do is I introduce you to new things all the time. And then there's another part of me that's like, just forget about it. You already have everything you need, you know, and and just work with what you've got, you know. So that's my honest, you know, life's complicated, I guess, you know, there's not one right answer, but I do like to say, get the most out of what you've got already, and just, you know, don't worry about, you know, what was your other question? What's your favorite pedal for an AC30 other than a pedal for an AC30 other than a TV? What's it? Oh, a top boost, you mean? You mean to go into an AC30? Well, a memory man, because then you can do the edge, right? AC30s, top boost AC30s are a little picky about what you push into the front of them. Generally speaking, a warm or overdrive or something, screamer, or maybe like, a Klon or an OCD in the low setting, probably good into the normal channel. I'll tell you, I mean, amazing sound is the Carl Martin Plexitone going into the normal channel. You can't run it into the top boost channel. It'll sound like a swarm of bees. But if you run it into the normal channel, which sounds kind of dark and boring on its own, but a Carl Martin Plexitone into the normal channel of an AC30 is a rock machine. It's like a great sound, because the thing about the Plexitone is it has a lot of high end in it. And so you got to be careful about the type of amp or channel that you run it into. Yeah, that's a really good sound. I turn your AC30 into a rock monster. Yeah. Okay. As an old amp guy, I've really come to enjoy working with IR. I still like two notes the best. Pete and Friedman's packs are killer. Thanks. Yeah, Dave's are really good in there too. I agree. And but I love mine as well. Yeah. You can use, like Wall of Sound, like the two notes Wall of Sound plugin, and then use whatever load box you want. So like if you want to use my IRs within Logic or something, or even with like an amp model, or like you could use an Embrini plugin or something, turn off the IRs and then put a Wall of Sound plugin after it with my IRs, and so you could do it all in the box or whatever, So that's a way to go. You don't need to use there might be some misconception that you've got to use the two notes load box with my IRs. You don't. You just need Wall of Sound and then need my IRs. So you could do that. Wall of Sound is their kind of IR host for their proprietary, IR format. Yeah. Okay. What else we got here? Quality interview on Beato's channel with Jerry Cantrell. Solid Dweezil interview. Yeah, I love what Rick does. I mean, he's doing great work. I've got a lot of interviews I should get to there and watch. Yeah, there's a whole bunch I haven't seen. Super chat here from Ugly Lemon. Recording cab with two mics, 1073 MP channels are in series. No, they're not in series. They're in parallel. The BAE has a summing mixer, so that means by definition parallel, not in series. You've got both channels, and they just go out one output. So your mix, it's like a little passive mixer, basically. Something with the design, I guess it's just a sort of design limitation with that type of passive mixer. You will get a level drop, so you do need to preamp the sound after the blended output up a little bit. I don't understand technically why, but it just is. So just either run into another line input of another mic pre and gain it up, or most modern, UA software, for example, you can just turn up the gain, or added like an API plugin or a Neve, 1272 or whatever, just a line gain, and bring it up like 10 dB, and you'll be fine then. That's it. Yeah. I'm a little bitchy, but I was kind of pissed that Cantrell did Beato before Tone Talk. I could see that because of his relationship with Dave, but yeah, I mean, Beato's kind of, I guess, the gold standard, Speaking of which, next week, I made a little mistake. This was my fault, but I made a little scheduling mistake. Blue Saraceno is, I think, doing next week. I'm going to confirm it tomorrow night. I think we're 90% sure that he's going to do next week here on Sunday Live. So just to, some of you might be like, where's Blues? Because I think I said that he was going to be on this week. I just made a little error with scheduling. So anyway, we had a good phone chat this morning, and I think it's next week that he's going to do. So 90% sure. So that'll be a hoot. He's a riot and a great guy and a wealth of knowledge. and amazing guitar player. So Blue Saraceno, I'll put up if it's happening, I'll put up the watch page tomorrow night or Tuesday morning, so that it's plenty of time in advance. Okay. Let's see. Somebody went to the Hendrix Experience, and Thorpe, excuse me, went to the Kenny Experience Hendrix show. Kenny Wayne Shepherd is the closest thing to SRV you get these days. He's a monster. He's always been great. Yeah. You guys enjoyed, looks like, Rick's Dweezil interview as well. Dweezil is another great dude, great player, and interesting cat and wealth of knowledge. Let's see. I'm going to move down in the chat. Let's see. First of all, says Joe, there's far too much complaining about gear online. That energy could be better directed at practicing and writing music. I agree. Yeah. What's my favorite guitar pedal? The tuner. I always say my Polytune, my favorite pedal. Because if I don't have that, then everything sounds bad. Because I'll be out of tune. I'm looking around here like I'm going to get an answer from looking at the floor. On my pedal board, I don't have a favorite really, but some greatest hits. I love the Freak Out because of what it does, the feedback thing. I love my Unit 67 Boost from Drybell. Just a great sounding boost compressor that just adds juice and goodness to every guitar sound. I still think the Mobius is the best multi-mod pedal out there. It's incredible. I mean, and then I've got an H90 on here, of course, which is like a creme de la creme, processor on a rack processor on a board. It's amazing. It's very complicated, but the sounds are exceptional. So fantastic. I love my ST3000 EVH delay. Put that on there. Of course, my Unobtainium. Fantastic. All these pedals I love. And I love a good Phase 90. Still love it. Pete got to do a video with Dweezil about Van Halen. I did. I'm on the Running with the Dweezil podcast, and we had a long chat about Van Halen and stuff. So, not a video, but it was a podcast. So, love to do a video though. He tipped me to a couple things that I was doing wrong, like little parts, Van Halen, like the way I was playing them, because he's got his shit figured out, for sure. It was like a little one note thing in Beautiful Girls that I didn't have right. I always used to play it. It was da 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 da, so I would go da 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 down to the F sharp, and he goes, it's the G there, it's not F sharp. And I was like, what? And then I listened to it, and I was like, oh, when you just miss something, like one little thing in a song, and he was right. He had it nailed. So I still find things like that I get wrong every now and then. Okay, this is a good discussion. I want to use the Tone X mini pedal with my usual pedal board that I use in the FX loops on my amps. Okay, so I would just plug my guitar into the board, then FX send to Tone X. No. Okay, so I want to use the Tone X mini pedal with my usual pedal board that I use in the FX loops in my amps. Stephen, I need to know more about. Are you still planning on using your amps preamp? Is what I can't get my head around right now. Yeah, I just can't quite. There's a number of different scenarios. Tone X is an amp, capture device, basically. Or you can also use it as an overdrive capture or distortion capture device. If you wanted to basically use the amp sounds in the pedal to add different amp sounds to your rig, there's ways you can do that using Switcher. involving loops of the switcher and stuff, where you kind of will make your amp preamp in one of the loops, and then you can kind of switch it in and out of line. And then you could also pick the Tonex and have that in line, and instead send the output of the Tonex to your amplifier's effect return, and it would kind of become like the amp preamp. So I'm trying to figure out if that's what you're, if you want to add amp sounds to your rig. So maybe just tell me in another comment down below, like exactly what you want to accomplish actually, and then I can tell you what you would need to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Which of the practice headphone amps that you plug right into your guitar do you recommend? The Vox is cool. Vox amp plug definitely sounds good. The Mustang cool as well. NuX, yeah, I mean, like all of those work. I did a video for the Mustang, so you can check that out. I was very impressed with it. You want a little more, this guy's got headphone out on it with its own level knob for the headphones. So this is basically that too. The amp plug is sort of a, I think it's like 3 cents. Doesn't it do the Brian May thing? Does it have like a built-in boost thing, I think, and then like a kind of a top boost sound? So, it's a great, simple, I think they're $40 or something, aren't they? I might be talking out of turn. I might be wrong, but I think they're very cheap. The Mustang, maybe it's $100. I don't. It's not very expensive from what I remember. It'll do more. There's more capability there, but you might not need all that capability. So both are great. Let's see. Looking through the chat. Like the new haircut. Yeah, it's just kind of growing. I'm just letting her grow till November or so before I get a trim. Hockey hairdo. This isn't a hockey hairdo. Hockey hairdo is when if it was if I had the full on the mullet. I used to have one, so it was 89. Don't judge. But you guys might have a different idea of hockey hair in Sweden. Yeah. Okay. Business in the front, party in the back. Why is the Yamaha SPX90 symphonic so hard to replicate? Well, that was that classic sound that thing did. It was awesome. Symphonic. Was it just detune or is it chorus? It's like detune, right? Pitch detune. Ben Coombs has his show on tonight. Come join the fun. He's got his later on. Coming to you live from Ottawa. My niece Hurt says I have a few small, medium-sized multi-effects pedals with a headphone out. They all do what I needed them to do. There you go. There you go. There you go. Is the Blues, somebody just asked me, is the Blues Saraceno stream next week? I think so. 90% sure. I will confirm with him tomorrow evening. He's just double checking on his schedule. And I think it's going to happen next week. Yeah. Most likely. I am watching doing service on my 1984 Yamaha FG450S acoustic. It's been in the case for years. 5-year-old strings, and it still sounded good. New strings coming next. I think I've underrated this guitar. Yamaha, yeah, they're cool. Like they're old acoustics. Similar like old Ibanez Destroyers and stuff. They made some great stuff. Or the Yamaha SG 3000s or whatever that Carlos would use, and they were cool. What is the company Marshall up to? Well, they're making headphones and Bluetooth speakers, right? They got all kinds of stuff going on. They're making all kinds of money doing different things these days with their brand. Other than that, I saw a Polyphia video with JCM 800s the other day. Anybody see that? On the Marshall website. I think they're running modelers into the returns or something. I don't know. These kids these days. Did you make a conscious choice to not have a 24 fret guitar? So many rock players have them. Yeah, I don't. I go the other way. I could work with 21, to be honest. It'd be just fine. 22 is all I ever need. I do have a couple 24 fretters. Haven't said that though. I've got a Sir Modern that's 24, and if I need to do that. But yeah, I'm pretty limited on the 24 fret. I don't need that many frets. I ordered some of my Sirs with 21 because I love the look of the Sir with the rounded fingerboard in the end, like an old Fender. So my blue Sir S is a 21 fret. I have one more that's a 21 fret too. Actually, I have two more that are 21 frets. I think it's cool. What the hell do you need that range for up there? What do you can do up there? If I got to get up there, I'll hit a whammy pedal. I got to go soon, says Arthur. Don't let us keep you. I've gone 2 hours. I guess I got to go soon too, but just a couple more minutes here. I'll grab the super chat and finish up. Happy Sunday live, says Javier. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Speaking of Nano Cortex, if using an overdrive in front of an amp, how do you feel about converters in front of amps and no analog drive-through or true bypass? I don't really care. I mean, if it sounds good, it sounds good. Just try it out. And if you're like, don't overthink it. That's what I would say. If you plug it in, you're like, I don't like what this is doing in my tone, and you really go back and forth and you're really like hearing something, then fine. But I'm using, like I said, I'm about to embark on my clinic tour, and I'm using the Quad Cortex 4-cable, which by definition means I run into the Quad Cortex first, and then I take the effects send out of it, one of the loops, and go to the front of the amp. So right there, I'm going digital out of my guitar before it even hits the amp. Does it change the sound? I don't know. I mean, maybe a little. The level seems very good. It seems like it's pretty much a through, like unity gain situation. When I go back and forth, I can maybe hear a smidge of, I don't know, something like, but maybe not. And then like in the context of when I'm jamming, and I don't care really. I just do what, I did a show recently like with the quad like that, a PT100. And somebody commented like the guitar sounds are amazing on that show. I'm like, it's a great sounding box. Like, so yeah, if you think it's not sounding good, then there you go, but if you're like, I don't know, is it, then it's probably fine, if you're overthinking it, don't overthink it is what I would say. Because no, analog drive-through is one thing, or true bypass. Well, it doesn't have a true bypass. That's true, but yeah, just, I view everything these days as tools, like the quad and this Nano Cortex and everything. It's tools to get the job done. And, when we're talking about like, who's our crowd, we're a bunch of nerds and stuff, and we're going to fine tune. If man, I mean, when I'm out on tour with, Five for Fighting, for example, doing my gig, I use quad, right? The last thing on anybody's mind is the latency of my device. It's like they're mainly there to hear John's songs. I'm part of the mix in the band, and nobody's going to notice, all that kind of stuff with that. There's no, unless people are there to see me, which I, occasionally get people come out that are like, that know what I do and stuff like that. But most of the time, or if you're going to see a band, most of the gigs that most of us do, it's like nobody cares is the reality, if there's 3 milliseconds or 1.5 milliseconds of latency, nobody cares, it's not going to make any difference to the person just having a good time and rocking out, listening to a tune and having a drink and, just there to have fun or whatever. And it's certainly not going to matter if you're, playing in a casino or playing at a whatever. It's just like, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. So, I played a front of 50,000 people in 2003 with a pod bean. I did. I went to the Philippines with a bean, and I played 50,000 people, with that pod bean. One of the bigger gigs, that I've done, and nobody cared. And I got paid the same. My check didn't bounce, and yeah, that's all true. Let's see. Why anyway did Warren get a 68 Plexi modded to 2203 to tune factory JCM wasn't enough? I don't have any idea what the story is behind that amp and why. I don't know if it was owned by somebody before and he bought it like that, or if he had it modded or what. I don't know. I mean, but he just found a way where you could turn the knobs and it would sound really good. And sure enough, it was, he'd kind of run it like an old Plexi, like where it was up really, really loud and it would just do a thing and it sounded amazing. So, yeah. All right. Here's somebody using Moises and happy with separation parts. Mark T. Somebody asking me about Okay, so you guys must be talking about Moises and maybe stem splitter and Logic or something, or a way to kind of isolate, different parts in songs. Moises is amazing. I've used it. It works great. I love it. That said, stem splitter in Logic is a new feature in the latest Logic where it'll separate out drums, bass, guitar, vocals, everything, and just boom, 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 put them all in separate tracks. And I use that now because it's right there in Logic, and I can just drop a track into a Logic session. It'll just do it. Don't have to deal with the phone. And then exporting. Moises works, you upload a song to them. It does it. It's working. You can see the little wheels spinning, and then it spits it back to you and stuff like that. And then then you need to export it and then send that to your computer. It's great. I mean, unbelievable tool. Stem splitter just makes it that much easier, for me, for my purposes anyway. There's other things in Moises that are really cool. Like it'll, find the tempo and things like that, and do like some really cool things of whatever you load into it. But I don't know, world of abundance these days, right? Okay. Let's see. Braxall says, I went on a tour with a local band in the 80s, did not like it too much with guys farting in the van. Yeah. I remember the great Ed Cherney being in a band where he was mixing, and we were in a van in Puerto Rico, and I always remember getting in the van, and after a gig or whatever, and he said there was some problems on this trip. Everything was there was a little bit of chaos going on and stuff like that, and I think one thing after another just sort of piled up, and we got in the van, we're sitting there, and Ed goes, well, at least the van smells like ass. So you just made me think of that. Thanks for reminding me of that. He was a funny guy. But yeah, it's always, so the road is a mixed bag. I don't know who produced John Mayer's albums, but they sound killer. 100%, and maybe give a fair amount of credit to John, because he doesn't suffer fools, I don't think, and he's a pretty astute guy when it comes to things like that, and probably wouldn't accept it if they didn't sound great. My friend Kurt Schneider, who I don't really see that much anymore, but he worked on that the album with Blue on it, and this what's it called, the Sob Rock album. He worked on that as engineer. He has a lot of respect for John. But anyway, super chats here. I got to get to a couple, and then I'm going to split. Dylan Croft says, for my 210 cab project, I'm interested in matching a Celestion Gold with either greenback, creamback, or other. Thoughts or advice? Man, I mean, I bet the gold, and look at the efficiency of the creamback 10 and the greenback 10, and just pick one that's closest maybe to the gold. I don't like a spread of more than 2 dB in the efficiency rating, because I find it'll start to the other speaker just becomes so dominant. You don't really, it sounds almost like, is this a 112? That can sort of happen where you just don't hear the other one that much. Although if you're just doing it to mic, it doesn't really matter then. If you're using it as like a studio cab and you can close mic, then it's not as important. But just check out the efficiency. As long as they're not more than 2 dB apart, that's a concern. I would pick the one, because both the creamback and the greenback are going to be. I've got a greenback. I love the Gold 10. I think it's one of the best speaker selections ever made. And the greenback 10 is really nice too. Haven't tried the creamback, so I don't have a firsthand, but I bet it's really good, because it's probably very similar to the greenback, but with a higher power handling. So it might be a little darker, maybe, is my guess. But it's a guess, but probably I'm probably right. Also consider the power handling, because I don't know what the goal is. It 50 watts, the Gold? Maybe, I think, maybe. The greenback's going to be 25. The creamback might be 50 or 60 or 65 or something. So check that out, because consider, you want it to work with the amp you've got now, and maybe it's adequate power handling for that. But what if you want to use a 60 watt amp or something down the road? Maybe you just want a little extra, headroom or whatever there. You know what I'm saying? Okay. There's a couple more super chats got to get to here. Thank you guys for all the super chats. I appreciate you. Guitar Smart says, often heard critique of digital is a lack of amp and room sound. Would it not be better be described as a lack of loud amp interacting with the guitar in the room problem? Yeah. Actually, it's more that than you get two factors. You get the tube amp, take that out of the equation. Okay, so tubes versus digital. Yes, that's a thing. But the bigger factor, I think, is the lack of speaker. Yeah, and lack of cabinet. I've mentioned that before. Just the physical, the physics of like a guitar cabinet, how it sounds when interacting with the guitar, the feedback loop, and all that. And also just how a cab feels and sounds on stage. A guitar cabinet, which is a very, very imperfect device that spreads sound around the room and bounces off of things and stuff, and that's the sound that we've all gotten to know and love. So we take that out of the equation, it's just all right here in ears or whatever. I've talked about this a lot, don't want to bore, but that is the bigger factor. If you use a modeler HX Stomp or whatever, into a power amp with no IRs and a guitar cabinet, sounds a lot more like an amp than just going direct or whatever, or it sound like the familiar sound is what I'm talking about. Like feels, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty close to my amp, whereas if you just go direct and all the sound is right here and you compare that to your amp on a stage with that's going to feel very, very, very different, So yeah, 100% agree with what you're saying. And it's a good assessment. Yeah. How far back am I? I'm pretty far back in the chat, aren't I? Damn. Sorry, but that's what happens. Do you have any Kemper profiles for sale? Not right now. I don't. Thank you for the super chat, though. One of these days, I got to come out with just put like a month into recording nothing but Kemper profiles, Helix presets, Tone X, the whole 9 yards. Put it all out there. Because once again, there's no money in music anymore. But there is in peripheral things. Guitars for your project. My surreactive load has a pulsating sound going on. Is it like a really low level kind of little squeaky thing? Contact their customer service about that. See what they say. I would just start a ticket. If it wasn't doing it before and it's doing it now, they'll sort you out. Yeah. cs@sir.com. Just send them an email and they'll start a ticket. Peter, videos this week. Hi, buddy. Thanks so much for the super chat. Appreciate you. Yeah, so this week, the mothership from CADDIS. It's a preamp device with impulse responses built in. Think similar to the Friedman IRX sort of architecture style of pedal. You can use it direct. You could use it into an amp. Maybe the effects returner into a power amp, something like that. So video in that. I've got some other things here. I've got a pedal here from Source Audio. I've got to get to Big Sky from Strymon. They asked me to make a video, and I'm way overdue on that, and I need to get on that. Also, the Tone Dexter, which is a device to add IRs to acoustic sounds to make them much more realistic. Pog 3, got to get that done too, as well as just kind of a video on thoughts and stuff about my new studio monitors, my Barefoots, which I love, absolutely adore. All that stuff coming. So, but not all in 1 week, but that's what I'm working towards as ASAP. So, thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate you. And JJ or Soundtech 606 for Fender Blues Deluxe. My guess is you're fine with either, but you might want to consult a tech. It's probably a good question for Friedman. Oh, Soundtech 6L6. I thought you were going to say 6V. Right. It's a Blues Deluxe. I think you're fine probably with either. I'd probably go JJ. I'd probably go JJ. Or I'd go red bass PS Vane. Supposed to be very nice. JJ red bass PS Vane. Softec 6L6. But I think they will work. When you say Softec, are you talking like the 5881, or they've probably got a couple other variations? I would just go the red bass or the JJ if I was you. I've had JJ 6L6s in my old basement for, I don't really use that amp much anymore, but they were in there for years and they're still in there and they're just fine. So good sounding tube and reliable and the whole 9 yards. All right, everybody. I'm going to split. So watch out tomorrow for the watch page for the Blue Saraceno. Not interview, just hang. We're gonna hang. We're gonna two dudes hanging. I think it's next week. 90% sure. I'll put up the watch page within 48 hours if it's happening. And other than that, I don't know. Be nice to one another and have a terrific week. And I appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe if you haven't. Please hit the thumbs up before you go. And just have an amazing week. I hope good things happen to you all this week. Take care, everybody.